episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be talking about what is on the horizon for the Republican Party. Now, I know what you're thinking. Alex, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Well, I'll tell you why it matters. One, because we are headed towards a wacky midterm election cycle. And it's, frankly, the most important part of Republican politics right now. You may be thinking, oh, Donald Trump, the secession plan. Yeah, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the last part of his presidency will be determined by the midterms. If he has a Democratic House and they just continue to block him and he's not able to do much, and I mean that in the most light sense, because of course an executive have way more overreach, then it will determine how things go. So obviously we're going to start with our daily delight. Who do you think is the best nominee to come out of this list? And I know you're probably thinking, well, hold on, what's the list? We're going to go through it. So you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for the context, but I still want to know your opinion. Throw it down there in the comment section. With that said, let's jump into the article, which comes from alternet.org, which is a more progressive website. Headline reads, Conservative Lawmakers' Bombshell Decision Could Radically Reshape House GOP. So we're going to jump to the middle here. Quote, Roy, this is talking about Chip Roy of Texas, is a prominent player in the House Freedom Caucus and is known for being a relentless budget hawk. And then we'll give the extra context here. Quote, Conservative Rep. Chip Roy of Texas made a major announcement. He is running for Texas Attorney General, a position recently held by far-right Ken Paxton, who is challenging incumbent Senator Ron Cornyn, Republican, in the state's 2026 GOP U.S. Senate primary. So basically, Chip Roy is gunning for Paxton's spot, and Paxton is gunning for John Cornyn's spot, which is just another layer in this deep craziness. Quote, several other notable Freedom Caucus members are seeking higher office too. Reps Andy Biggs of Arizona, Byron Donalds of Florida, and Ralph Norman of South Carolina are running for governor in their respective states. And Rep. Barry Moore of Alabama launched a Senate bid last week, and Rep. Andy Ogles of the Republican Tennessee is interested in being appointed to the Senate if Senator Marsha Blackburn wins the governorship. Now, what does all of that actually mean? It means that the Trump coalition has moved beyond the House. And I'm not saying the House is easy to get into, but on the federal level, it is one of the easiest, not easy overall, but one of the easiest out of all the options, offices to win. And because the repercussions are less long-lasting, it's a 2-year term. And that also means that they have the ability to have quick staying power without necessarily making careers out of it. But these are people that came out of the MAGA era, that came out of the 2016s and the anti-Biden era, and now they are going for higher office. So, of course, this means they'll have more influence across the country, as MAGA already does, but these are much more aligned on the true principles of MAGA. They came up in the MAGA era rather than people that rather simply adopted MAGA. But also because it leaves room for them to bring in people that they trust into these different areas to give their endorsements and to propagate MAGA further. And you may be thinking, Alex, why? Why do you care? Why does it matter? Well, at the end of the day, I had a conversation with someone earlier, and I said, the Republican Party, as you know, is dead. We've known this for a while, but there's no coming back from it. And they kind of looked at me weird, and I don't know if this person actually ended up agreeing with me, but there is no coming back from it. Just like there is no coming back from Bernie Sanders' dominance and popularity within the Democratic Party. There's no returning to center. The alignment has become more populist versus mainstream than anything else. It doesn't mean that all the populists agree. There still is left and right, and that still causes some level of division. But overall, there's no coming back from this realignment that has actually stratified more on populist, mainstream, and also on class divides. And if you have people that propagate this through their language or their actions or their political stances in America First and how they choose to go about it, there is no going back to the big government, small government only sort of conversation. You're either going to have more stripped and stripped isn't the right word. You're either going to have more divided caucuses or you're going to have realignments overall and have people switch parties in the next 10 years, which I wouldn't see as that much of a surprise in my mind. So you have the extra context now. This is a shorter episode today because there's more to come, of course. And it's a little bit later on this conversation, but I wanted to at least run this by a friend, and they seem to agree with the broader strokes, which is a populist era is going to define the politics of the United States, though I don't know if they necessarily, if in the future, I don't know if they necessarily agree with the way that I would have framed it. And that's fair enough. I want to know your opinions on top of who you think is the best candidate to actually win any of these open seats. If you're in any of their districts or in any of their states when they're running for statewide office, obviously, let me know. Throw it down in the comment section. I'd love to hear your opinions. With that said, if you want to if you want to read this entire article, it's actually linked in the description below. The like and subscribe button. Alternet is a free service most of the time, and you can definitely get it through a third-party web reader without having to look at ads. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the link to the Twitter at your DailyFlip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the international 6 and 6 podcast that comes out on Tuesday and Thursday. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.